Hi all, I have another very interesting game to show you of Leela Chess against Ethereal. This is in the TSAT Cup Round 2, 2018. Let's have a look. E4 from Leela. We have a Sicilian defense, knight f3, e6. This is the book actually given to them, and now they're on their own resources. So D4 from Leela, going for the open Sicilian. And we go into this line of the Sicilian defense, which is usually the start of the Sveshnikov, one of my favourites. But actually bishop e6 was played, not b5. So this is a very well known Sveshnikov start position, where here bishop takes f6, for example. This is a continuation. But there's also another continuation with an immediate bishop takes f6. But anyway, in this game we see bishop e6 instead. Has been played over the board, knight c4, rook c8, and now bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, avoiding structural damage. And now here it's quite a bit of counterplay on knight takes d6. That wasn't played actually. Instead we see knight b6, so very positional around this central square. These knights eyeing that crucial central square, and of course it will be with tempo on the queen here, attacking the queen. So nice idea, knight b6, and I think pretty well trodden position actually. Knight cd5, queen goes to g6, queen d3 protecting e4. Okay, bishop e7, and now knight c7 check. Most people do play this, it seems, in this position, but g3 was played by Gatakamsky, believe it or not, instead of the tempting check, and that was against Judith Polgar, Buenos Aires 1994, and actually he lost that game later on, not necessarily because of g3, so it's just a reference game you might want to check out. But knight c7 check appears statistically at least to be the critical move to get rid of black's castling rights. Now after knight takes e6, we see queen takes e6, and this d5 square is the main centre of attention. Queen d2, we see king g8, knight d5, bishop d8, h4, very, very interesting stuff. Queen g4 hitting the e4 pawn, that's protected, h5, and now g3, which provides the possibility now of bishop h3. This knight is stopping any knight b4, by the way, just in case you were thinking to distract the queen from this e4 support. It's difficult for black to do that at the moment. That is a really magnificent knight here. We see queen c8, bishop h3, and at first sight you might think, well, hold on, where's the queen going? But black has this check, of course, to let the queen free like this to d8. But still, it's a very pleasant position indeed now with this knight on d5. Queen c4, bishop b6, white castles, rook h6, rook ad1, knight e7. And now that bishop is snapped off. a4, Leela is fixing down pawns now on the queen side, and now queen takes c6 is played. Knight takes c6. It appears this might be slightly stronger than b takes. As an example continuation, this is just a fictional example, it seems white does okay in these lines. The 2-to-1 pawn majority here is important. For example, like this is like a dangerous pass pawn over there, and white will be getting a winning position quite comfortably sometimes with that winning passed pawn. So anyway, knight takes c6, rook d5, and it seems, yeah, this was like a no counterplay position. There doesn't seem to be much going on for black, but rook f3, okay, is annoying. It does attack c3, rook c3, the rook goes back, and now some playing around. King g2, taking at least that f3 square away from the rook. Okay, now rook g1, mysterious rook move. Some high-level shuffling, as I've mentioned. This is a trademark Leela game. Yep, high-level shuffling here. Until this point, bishop c4, we start to see something emerge with the f7 pawn, and a commitment from black, a structural commitment. Pawns don't go backwards, so this is actually an extra commitment. And you might think, well, hold on, that rook was also, wasn't it doing a job of this d6 square? It seems as though Leela's getting an edge here you might think, well, let's check out rook f6. It seems white can actually play for this kind of position, which is pretty nice. I mean, I don't think black's doing too much here. White can build up. So that's a good advantage anyway. So f6. And now this playing for b5 looks dangerous. So here first though, king g2. And now actually king h3, encouraging the king to be able to take to maintain the pawn structure. Very interesting move rather than anything else. So trying to fix black's pawns. Black actually played rook h7. On g takes h4, it's surprising, but it seems white can get away with king takes h4. The king just steps back on the check. And this isn't that dangerous, it seems, because white controls, critically, that g8 square from the rook. So I'm not sure this is too dangerous. It appears as though white can do this and get a big advantage later, like this, for example. So rook h7, and we have bishop e6. The bishop seems to be dominating these light squares, and we have this 3-to-2 pawn majority here, clearly, as well. Nice 3-to-2 to use. Knight c6. But yeah, this pawn move did weaken this d4 square. Pawns don't go back. So we have actually weakened the d4 square here. And black pounces on that, hitting the bishop. Bishop goes to d5. Check. Now this does mean that if the knight's not guarding f3, one could think that f3 is going to be sometimes useful to take and then expose the f6 pawn, potentially, as one plan. But b5, this is another more straightforward plan. Leela establishes actually a very aggressive pawn chain now, restricting the black's king. It looks visually impressive, but often there's a very big difference between what is visually impressive and what is concretely winning. Now, a very concrete move here, c5. But yeah, the rook does seem to be in Siberia at the moment. Takes rook c1, and the king comes out. Rook takes, king d8. Black has to keep b7 protected here, of course. Rook a1, and now one pair of rooks come off. Check. Rook c4. I was thinking rook c7 as a forcible try. It doesn't quite work because this attempt to get these pawns, it seems black can be quite stubborn in this kind of scenario. It doesn't seem entirely clear if this is winning for white or not. So anyway, the tension is really kept with rook c4 and now rook c5. And now there's a phenomenal plan actually played by Leela, it seems. The king comes to the center, bishop comes to the center as well. And you'll note that the king's coming to e3. This is a really phenomenal plan. So that shields c8, for example, there, that knight d6. So the knight's having to come defensively against that rook c8. So it's neglected f3, which means the king can now support e4 and support f3. And that would basically create that mechanism of potentially exposing the f6 pawn. If we can play f3, then that's going to be interesting. And in fact, that's the plan, it seems now. The bishop is also quite a dominating piece in this position. Very, very nice positional play. f3 now, whilst the knight is not in time to stop it. So what has happened here? Well, king g2 for rook f1 now is very dangerous, because also there's things to think about, like rook f5 hitting h5. The knight comes into d4, rook f1, and actually knight e2 is played. The thing is, the rook has to also guard b7. Can't play rook g6 because of b7. Rook g6, just put this on the board. That's winning. So it's actually, the exposure of the f6 pawn, it seems to be the undoing of black here. Knight e2 going into a very lost rook and pawn ending after the tactical check, using the pin. But this position is very, very lost now for black. The game ended here. It's a winning rook and pawn ending. Both engines thought it was absolutely winning. There's various things to do. For example, check and taking on e5 it seems strong enough. It's an eventual win. So I hope you found this as instructive as I did. It seems as though Leela can tame the counterplay of some of the more traditional engines. But Ethereal has made fantastic progress this year. Fantastic engine in its own right, great achievements, very good programmer behind it. So this was no easy game and no easy match for Leela. In fact, while I'm doing this video, the match is still going on with Ethereal. Check out TSAC. Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.